What is going on, baseball fans, and welcome back to District Baseball. I am your host, Trey. You can follow me on Twitter at reverse, 2R's, 2S's at the end, and you can follow us at District BSB as well for any updates. And we're going to be getting back into the Nats today because spring training has officially started and we're playing games. It's 7:49 on Sunday night, and our Nationals are 2-0 in spring training, so I think it's time we start planning that parade. We get the banners made, we get the merch made, and we start celebrating a 2025 World Series champion, because clearly this 2-0 start is sustainable for the rest of the year. But anyways, jokes aside, we have some stories to get into. We're going to talk about a couple new signings. We're going to talk about how I think the roster might be constructed, and we're also going to talk about potential injury problems. But the first thing we're going to discuss is this story that kind of threw Nats Twitter into a buzz when it was revealed, because basically Tom Lavero, he's a columnist at the Washington Times. He's like their lead sports columnist, been there forever. On a podcast, reported that Mike Rizzo visited with Christian Walker this offseason to negotiate a deal, and they had a deal, or they seemingly, were going to try and make a deal, asked Mark Lerner for the money to make the deal, and Mark Lerner said no. So basically everyone started going nuts. Basically, you had the Lerner defenders come out and immediately start saying, well, blah, 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 Masson deal, blah, 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 draft picks, blah, 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 all that. And then you had people who hate Mike Rizzo coming out and be like, why didn't Rizzo get this deal done? And then you got people that hate both that are like, oh, God, the Nats don't know what they're doing. It's a whole thing. And I don't really think it should be, personally. This story is kind of a big nothing burger to me. It's nothing that we already don't know. Mark Lerner doesn't want to spend money. It's pretty obvious. He hasn't spent hardly any of it. Hasn't made a real multi-year contract deal, like a long-term deal, since, I believe, 2019. And that's if you do not count Ruiz, who is a pre-arb deal and is really not making that much money. So we kind of know this. We kind of already know that this is the case. We know that Rizzo is given a limited budget, and we know that he does what he can with the resources he's allowed. One of those things being a pivot, basically, if this is true, and he immediately pivots to trading for Nathaniel Lowe, because he can do that. There's nothing really that Lerner could say against a trade for a player who is not quite as good as Christian Walker, but he's definitely up there in terms of value for less money. So Lerner can't really say anything to that. So that's where Rizzo's power can be exercised, is in the trade market. And I do think that was a great get. I love the fact that we have Nathaniel Lowe on the team. I think he's a great player. I think he's a good influence on our young hitters, because he knows how to hit. He knows how to get the barrel on the ball. He knows how to take a walk. He knows how to hit to the gaps. Those are all good qualities to have, and I think he'll be a valuable addition to the team. The point is, there shouldn't be a limit. We should be able to sign a free agent if the free agent wants to come here. Mark Lerner's worth $5 billion, guys. $5 billion net worth. I don't want to hear about a Masson deal. The Masson deal always gets brought up about how the Nats aren't getting as much TV revenue as other teams from their TV deals, and that's why it's okay to not spend. And yes, it is completely true that the Nats don't get all the money they should from their TV deal. The Orioles siphon some of it. It happens. They've also received some of that revenue back since then, and none of it has gone into the team. They've gotten money from previous years. They're still trying to get more, but they've gotten some of that compensated, and none of it's gone back into the team. You still have the highest beer prices in the sport. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't buy the excuse that that's enough for us to sit here and accept losing and accept non-spending. I don't buy it. The draft compensation for Walker is a different thing. I think there's some validity to it. He received a qualifying offer, so we would have had to given up a draft pick if we signed him. So yeah, obviously we want draft picks, but at this point, in the rebuild, we should have already drafted our next guys. We should have drafted our next core. Like it's past time to go. I know we got the number 1 pick, and that's awesome. We got lucky and we got the number 1 pick. So obviously that player is going to be contributing to this current core. But even before that, I feel like, your guys are here. James Wood's here. Dylan Cruz is here. Robert Hassel is right here. Like these guys are ready. Brady House, AAA. Like they're ready to go. It's go time. And you need to supplement that with free agents. And you look at the roster. The roster's got some depth. The roster's got guys. But you need dudes as well as guys. You can't just have a team full of guys. You need a dude. And there might be a dude on this roster. They're young, but it's possible. But you can also sign more than one dude in free agency, Like, there's options here. There's options to make the team better. Having said all that, like I said, I don't really think this story is that important in the grand scheme of things because we already kind of knew this stuff. We're expecting it. And I definitely would say there's no excuses anymore after this season, especially if the Nats end up around 500, which I think that is possible. If the Nats end up close to 500, you have to spend next year. You have to. You just have to, or that the excuses run out, and the owner is the problem at that point. And the excuses have already kind of run out for me, but for other people that are more forgiving, more willing to wait through a rebuild that we've been waiting for a while. Like I said, we're in year 5, arguably 6. So that's kind of my point, is like, this doesn't change much. It's annoying that it has to be said and that we know that this is the case. But, we kind of already knew this was the case. So we just got to move on. We got to just try and make what we can happen with the budget we're given, with the pieces we have, and try and develop some of these players that we've drafted already. So that's where we're at now. With that, going into the season, we know kind of where the Learners stand and where Mike Rizzo is in terms of how much power he really has, which is seemingly not a lot. Anyways, we're going to move past that and get on to some better stories coming up. First of all, we've got some new signings to talk about. 2 new signings since last time we had an episode. We've signed infielder Paul DeYoung, and we've signed relief pitcher Lucas Sims. Now, again, 2 guys, not dudes, but guys that can come in, can contribute. Paul DeYoung has a great glove. That's kind of his big thing. He's going to really help this defense out. Lucas Sims has strikeout stuff. Nasty back-end bullpen guy. Walk issues are his big problem. With Paul DeYoung, it's the strikeout issues. So, you kind of have to give and take with that. But I don't hate the signings in a vacuum. I am a little sick of having third basemen that can't hit. I mean, Paul DeYoung hit 24 homers last year, which is, it's pretty good. But you look at the rest of the numbers. I mean, 32% strikeout rate. I don't find that to be sustainable. He's had a 79 OPS plus in the last 5 years as a hitter. He's really only succeeded in the juiced ball era. That was basically his good hitting happened during the juiced ball era, which the balls are, significantly less. They travel significantly less than they did in like 2019, for example. So I'm not really expecting much with the bat, but I am hopeful that he can be a great defender, because I do think that this team has potential to be one of the better defensive teams in the league if all goes right. And Lucas Sims, I always like getting a reliever with stuff, because relievers are volatile anyways. Like, you might have a good reliever for like 20 innings and he just sucks for 20 innings, and then he goes on and is fine for the rest of the season. But it can be a little up and down. So I don't mind this at all, having a guy who has strikeout stuff. If he gets on a hot streak, you trade him and you get something back for him. It's a perfect trade candidate, perfect depth candidate for the bullpen. And that's again, like I said, depth is what we got, which is good. I feel like the Nationals haven't really had depth in recent years. It's been one of my main complaints about, especially last year, where we went into the season with 5 starters total. And that included Josiah Gray, who was already injured at the time, and they knew it. And they still didn't go out and sign a guy. So I'm at least excited that we don't have that issue. If I was going to give you my current roster, this is what it would be. This would be my lineup currently. Shortstop C.J. Abrams, right fielder Dylan Cruz, left fielder James Wood, DH Josh Bell, first baseman Nathaniel Lowe, second baseman Luis Garcia, third baseman Paul DeYoung, catcher Keibert Ruiz, and center fielder Jacob Young. And that's what I think is probably going to be the opening day starting lineup. I don't know if it's going to be in that order, but those are probably going to be the guys. Speaking of James Wood, actually, he was kind of dealing with quad tendonitis, so he hasn't been playing yet in the games. But today he got back in defensive drills. I know people were freaking out. Obviously, you don't want your player to be injured at any point, so people were like, oh my God, this is going to be a problem. He was in defensive drills today, so I'm thinking he's going to be fine. Let him work through it. It's still February 23rd, plenty of time left to get ready to go coming for the season. But yeah, I think that's going to be our starting lineup. Now the bench is kind of interesting now, especially with the DeYoung signing, because it boots Rosario to the bench. Rosario's on a major league deal, so he's going to play. He's going to make the team. Then you have Riley Adams, catcher. Obviously, you got to have a backup catcher. We have Andrew Knizner, however you say his name, as on minor league camp, but he's never been anything, so I'm assuming Riley Adams gets that spot. And then you got two more spots, and this is where I don't really know. It's kind of a roster building thing. Basically, I was assuming Jose Tena would be on the bench to start the year because he's a lefty bat, and I figured he was going to platoon with Rosario, but then the signing of Paul DeYoung kind of throws a wrench into that. Now I'm not really sure if Tena makes the team out of spring training, which honestly, I wouldn't hate. I'd rather him get plate appearances at AAA than rot on the bench. If he's not going to play at all when he comes up here, I don't think we need to have him up here. Just let him play at AAA, get more experience, get more at bats. Then you also have Juan Yepez in the mix, who was getting reps in left field, which kind of throws a wrench into things as well because he only played first base and DH last year. If he can play even a reasonable left field, it's definitely, it's probably worth it to have him as a bench bat and a guy that can DH some days when we need him. So that kind of throws a wrench into things because then you also need an outfield spot. You need a fourth outfielder, which has kind of been Alex Call's territory. But then you also have two center fielders in your starting lineup already. So do you forego Alex Call as a defensive option and go for a bat like a Juan Yepez or a Stone Garrett, for example? I will always bring up Stone Garrett because I love him. I'm on the Stone Brigade. Hashtag Stone Brigade. Everyone join me. Stone Garrett, comeback player of the year. Book it. Anyways, so there's a couple options there, but like I said, it's actually having options is good. In this case, you want those depth guys. You want guys that that you can trust later. I've also seen Nasim Nunez floated around. I think Nunez should go to AAA because he doesn't have to be on the major league roster the whole season anymore. He graduated that Rule 5 stuff last year. That's why he was on the team. He served the entire season. Now he can go to AAA and try and develop a little bit. Not that I think he has a ton to offer, really. His bat is just not going to ever probably be there. But, utility, infield, and speed, he's got that. So let him work on that, be a guy that we can, bring off the bench later in the season, perhaps. That's how I would do it personally with him. So if it was me, I'm probably going to keep Tena because we don't have a left-handed bat off the bench. If we don't, he's the only left-handed bat off the bench. And then for the outfield, I'm probably leaning Juan Yepez as my fourth outfielder, which is crazy to say. But like I said, you've got two center fielders already in your starting lineup. Now, I wouldn't really mind Alex Call being the fourth outfielder either, but I can't imagine Jacob Young and Dylan Cruz sitting much. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like you'd rather have the bench bat at that point. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And then we've got the questions of the rotation. This is the big thing right here. Is this? We've got 5 spots for the rotation. Seemingly, you could go to 6 if you'd like. Have a 6-man rotation. They've done that before, and I'm kind of a proponent of doing that later in the season. But 5 spots, 7 players, 7 pitchers that could potentially be starters. Again, something we haven't had in the past. Depth, options. I like that. None of these guys are real aces. Obviously, Mackenzie Gore, being a guy that has that potential, is definitely our staff ace at the moment, but he's still not, an MLB caliber ace. But I asked you guys on Nats Central in the community to basically give me your 5. Give me your 5 out of those 7 guys. And I tell you what, nobody had the same 5. So it's going to be tough to figure out exactly who we're going to go with. I would say that everybody was in agreement for the most part that Mackenzie Gore and Jake Irvin are locks in this rotation, which I completely agree with. Obviously, Mackenzie Gore is the best pitcher in this rotation. Jake Irvin has thrown the most innings in this rotation. Then you kind of don't know because, one, either these guys can do something else, like, for example, Trevor Williams, who has the ability to be a swingman and a long reliever, and he's done well at it. So he has that ability, which gives him more versatility, which gives him a chance to maybe not be in the rotation. You got Michael Soroka is far better numbers-wise last season out of the bullpen than he was as a starter. So if you want to go from a pure roster-building perspective, not thinking about money, he's making $9 million. So that's more than most of our pitchers right now. But if we're not thinking about that, I think he fits in the bullpen better just because of those numbers, because of his fastball-slider combo. But he has starting experience. He's had an exceptional year as a starting pitcher before, although it was pre-injury. So that's kind of his options. Ogasawara, no MLB experience. He just doesn't have MLB experience. He has a ton of innings over in Japan and in professional sports, which is great. But you need, that MLB is a different beast. The mounds are different, the ball's different. It's going to take him potentially some time to get used to. And then DJ Hurst and Mitchell Parker, they're young guys. They're inconsistent, but they both have some great ability. DJ Hurst has an extremely high ceiling. He has one of the best fastballs in the sport, I think. 99% spin efficiency. 99% spin efficiency, right next to Cole Ragans on that leaderboard for fastball spin efficiency. Cole Ragans. I don't think we need stats, really, with Cole Ragans. You watch him throw a fastball, and you know it's a good fastball. And when you watch DJ Hurst throw a fastball, you know it's a good fastball, and the stats back it up. So definitely, in terms of stuff, DJ Hurst might have the best stuff in this group. I mean, Gore's got great stuff as well, so it would be an interesting battle. But Mitchell Parker also has some really, really good stuff. His fastball, he threw way too much. 50% of the time is not going to cut it. Especially when your breaking stuff is as good as his is. His curveball is gross. His slider is gross. The stats back it up. He had like a 238 expected WOBA on his slider last year. Ridiculous. That's like top 10%. He just didn't throw it that much. So I would really like for him to start focusing on mixing his pitches a little more, throwing the slider more, throwing the curveball more, throwing the fastball less, because you can really set up that fastball with your breaking stuff. I think that's what he should be doing. I don't think he should be setting up his breaking stuff with his fastball. I think it should be the other way around. Use the fastball to change eye levels. Use the fastball to change velocity. Get guys on their heels a little bit, and then drop some of those breaking pitches in the zone. He's got to be able to throw them for strikes. That's the big thing. Throws the curveball and slider for strikes. He's got a real chance to be gross. I promise. I feel like he was kind of the odd man out. I feel like in these discussions from the responses that I got from my post. But I take a look at some of those breaking ball numbers. I promise you're going to be impressed. Just needs to throw the fastball a little bit less. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. Like I said, depth is a good problem to have, but it is tough here. I don't really know exactly what is going to be the decision made, but here's what I would do. Not, again, roster building only, not thinking about how much they're getting paid, not thinking about how many years are on their deals, not thinking about any of that, just roster building. I would personally go Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, DJ Hers, Trevor Williams, and Mitchell Parker as my fifth. I would put Michael Soroka in the bullpen. I would either put Ogasawara in the bullpen, or I'd start him at AAA. Now, I know that he is also on a major league contract, and I think that he could technically just say no. He could refuse an assignment to AAA if he wants, in which case he would have to be on the roster. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But, it would probably make sense for him to just get more innings, get more used to the baseball, used to how these hitters hit, and start at AAA and do that. Now, again, I'm not sure if that's even possible. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's how I would do it from a roster building perspective. Now, if we're talking about money, money-wise, I believe, like I said, Michael Soroka is making the most this year, which would mean that they probably want to start him and see if he can be a starter. And you know what? I had some people actually point that out to me last week when I said he should be in the bullpen. And I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't mind him starting as a starter this year. But I really think that if he struggles, don't wait too long. Give him time, obviously. Give him a month or two as a starter. If he's can't figure it out, then move him to the bullpen, work that fastball slider combo, and I feel like that's where he ends up by the end of the season, which isn't a bad thing. We need great bullpen arms. I mean, we have guys, like I said, but we don't have a stud in the bullpen right now. We've got some guys with potential, and there's some players in the minor leagues, like, Susana, for example, who have that closer potential, but they're not ready yet. So still looking for answers there. If Soroka is an answer there, then he should be there. But I wouldn't mind if he starts early on in the season. That wouldn't kill me. So again, good options. Like I like that. We just don't have the top guy. Now, Gore, like I said, could be that guy. I really, really think this is the year he is it's put up or shut up, basically. Are you an ace or are you, a number 3? Which is fine. You need number 3s. But if we know what we've got after this year, we can understand how to proceed going forward, or how we should proceed going forward in free agency and such. So that's kind of what we are looking at. Now, you might be wondering, as some people were on Twitter, where is Cade Cavalli in this conversation? I did not include him at the time because I figured he's probably going to start in the minors. That's kind of how they've been operating. He didn't throw in the major leagues last year, so I wouldn't assume he would start in the major leagues before a rehab stint, and I was correct. Unfortunately, I was too correct because he's not pitching in spring at all, according to the Nationals. Not at all, which I can't say that I love, but I understand their reasoning for it, which is that they want him to join the team later in the season and finish strong with the major league team. So in that case, I get where they're coming from. I can't say that I love him not throwing at all in spring, because he's 2 years removed from Tommy John at this point. 2 years, it's been a while. It used to take 2 years total to recover from Tommy John. Now it takes far less time, but they're still slow playing him. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, I'm not sure how much we should expect from Cade Cavalli at this point at the major league level. I would love to be wrong on that. I really want him to be successful. He's definitely got the makeup of a successful starter. He's got the mentality of it. He's got the arsenal for it when he's healthy, but we just haven't been able to see him healthy. So really hoping that this works and that it does keep him healthy and that we do get to see him at the end of the year, just to see, again, what do we got? We got to figure out what we've got from him, if he's a part of this team going forward or not, and if we need to pivot and start looking towards draft, or if we need to start looking towards signing a starter. But we're going to find out this year, basically. If he doesn't pitch, then you kind of have to just put him to the side and be like, all right, man, we're not expecting you to do anything. Anything you contribute at this point is a bonus. If he does end up pitching this year, then we can kind of start to incorporate him into the team and see where he fits. So I'm hoping that that is the case. Obviously, I really want to see this dude pitch. I've seen him. I've seen the glimpses we've had. I remember 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021 in spring training, him striking out the side and like K-ing Paul Goldschmidt, who won the MVP that year, by the way, K-ing him, on like 3 pitches. I was blown away. Obviously, it's just spring training back then, but I was like, oh my god, dude, if this kid has really got it, which again, I think he did. I think he has the ability. It's just health. It's just health. So praying for health for him, for his sake, so he gets an opportunity. That's kind of all I ask for a lot of these guys, like Stone Garrett, for example. Give him an opportunity, to fight through injuries, come back, and make an impact. That's all I'm saying. Stone Brigade. Hashtag Stone Brigade. But anyways, we're going to end it there. Not nearly as long of an episode this time because, quite frankly, there's not much going on quite yet. No major injury news, no major storylines so far. Just some good baseball early on and trying to figure out where this roster is going to go and what they might look like heading into the season. Next time we do a Nats episode, I'm assuming we're gonna start knowing where some of these guys are going to fall. And once that starts to happen, we can start doing predictions about where this team ends up and who's going to be our team MVP and team Cy Young and whether or not we might make the playoffs, whether or not we will go 500. All of that is going to be in a prediction episode once we start figuring out what the actual roster is. But let me know what you think the rotation and roster should be looking like and what you've thought of some of the players so far in spring. And we will be back for the next episode when it's time to predict these Nats. Let's go baseball.